Shalom. I want to give all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushai, Bahashem, Rakakwadash. I want to give double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, because those are the men who I learned this truth from through the spirit and power of Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushai. Yahweh is the true name of the God of Israel. Yahushai is who the world ignorantly calls Jesus Christ, but his one and only true name is Yahushai. And pretty much in this lesson, I'm going to be showing you how the year of Jubilee, the year of release, and the law of the Hebrew servant, it all goes hand in hand, all right? Because in the ancient world, we had particular laws, statutes, and commandments to make sure that there's no poor Israelite, that there's no Israelite that's in need of something that can't get what they need for everyday survival. So you had particular laws, statutes, and commandments that was dedicated to helping the less fortunate, Israelites that was in poverty, all right? See, in today's society, you would have less homeless if you had the laws, statutes, and commandments implemented. Everybody would be helped, because the Lord is not just going to allow the nations to have the inheritance, and everybody on the planet Earth doesn't have enough resources to survive. Technically, according to the scriptures, there's no such thing as an overpopulated earth, all right? So when you go on Google, I typed in the year of Jubilee and the year of release in Hebrew servant laws, the difference between the three, right? So this is the AI overview. It says the year of Jubilee, which is the 50th year, right? Every 50th year is the year of Jubilee, and the year of release is every 7th year, right? So the year of Jubilee is every 50th year, and the year of release is every 7 years, which the year of release is going to tie hand in hand with the law of the Hebrew servant. If you had a Hebrew servant that was living under your roof, right? It says are distant biblical cycles for economic resetting. Jubilee focuses on returning land to the original owners and freeing all Hebrew servants. The year of release focuses on forgiving debts, resting the land, and releasing Hebrew servants who served 6 years. Key differences: the frequency. The year of release occurs every 7 years. It's recorded in Deuteronomy, the 15th chapter. The year of Jubilee occurs every 50 years after 7-year cycles. That's recorded in Leviticus, the 25th chapter. Land ownership. In the Jubilee, all land returns to the original family/tribe owners. This does not occur in the 7th year release. Servant release. The 7-year release, right? Because the year of release is every 7th year. The year of Jubilee is the 50th year, right? So it says, Hebrew servants who served 6 years are freed. The 50th year, which is the Jubilee, all Hebrew bond servants are free regardless of when they started serving. Debt cancellation. The 7th year is specifically a money release. Debts forgiven. So these are particular laws, statutes, and commandments that's not being held in today's society. Everybody's a debt slave. People are born into debt. They inherit debt, right? You got America has a world debt clock. All countries, are in debt to the central bankers. So even though these people parade around the planet Earth saying that they're the real Jews, they don't govern everybody under their system according to the laws, statutes, and commandments. All right? That's why the scripture says what it says in Proverbs 29:2. When the wicked bear fool, the people mourn. Who bear fool? Pursuing the Malachi 1:4, 2nd Ezra 6:9, and plenty of other scriptures. The Edomites, the so-called white men in Ceylon. So it says, the scope. Jubilee applies to property restitution, while the 7th year focuses on debt and agricultural rest. Hebrew servant laws difference in service time. It says in Exodus 21:2 and Deuteronomy 15:12, a Hebrew servant works for 6 years and is freed in the 7th year. Right? And I'm going to read all the scriptures. Leviticus chapter 25, verses 39 through 41, defines a Hebrew servant more like a hired worker who works until the Jubilee year, which could be up to 49 years, emphasizing redemption over strict 6-year terms. And then you had the ear piercing, right? If a servant loves their master and refuses freedom, they may become a servant for life or until Jubilee, signified by piercing their ear against the doorpost. All right. So without further ado, let's get into it, right? So first, we're gonna start off with Leviticus in the NLT, Leviticus 25, and I start at verse 8 in the NLT version, right? Concerning the year of Jubilee in the scriptures. Leviticus 25 and 8. In addition, you must count all 7 Sabbath years, right? So we're dealing with the year of release, 7 Sabbath years, right? It says you must count all 7 Sabbath years, 7 sets of 7 years, adding up to 49 years in all. So this is going into what the Jubilee is, right? Then, on the Day of Atonement in the 50th year, blow the ram's horn loud and long throughout the land. Set this year apart as holy, a time to proclaim freedom throughout the land for all who live there, right? Hebrew servants, right? It will be a Jubilee year for you, which is what, the 50th year. So what is it saying to do? It's saying you must count all 7 Sabbath years, 7 sets of 7 years, adding up to 49, right? Which would be what? 7 times 7. And then it say what? Then on the Day of Atonement, which is the 50th year, the Jubilee year, blow the ram's horn loud and long throughout the land. And then what will happen in that 50th year? You got to set this year as holy because it's the Jubilee year, a time to proclaim freedom throughout the land for all who live there. It will be a Jubilee year for you, when each of you may return to the land that belonged to your ancestors and return to your own clan or own tribe. All right? This 50th year will be a Jubilee year for you. During that year, you must not plant your fields or store away any of the crops that grow on their own. And don't gather the grapes from your unpruned vines. It will be a Jubilee year for you, and you must keep it holy. But you may eat whatever the land produces on its own. In the year of the Jubilee, each of you may return to the land that belonged to your ancestors, because each particular tribe was allotted land within the promised land of Israel. All right? It says, when you make an agreement with your neighbor, which your neighbor would be what? Your own kinsmen, according to the flesh, which are Israelites, to buy or sell property, you must not take advantage of each other. So you're not supposed to take advantage of your fellow Israelite. When you buy land from your neighbor, the price you pay must be based on the number of years since the last Jubilee. The seller must set the price by taking into account the number of years remaining until the next year of Jubilee. The more years until the next Jubilee, the higher the price. The fewer the years, the lower the price. After all, the person selling the land is actually selling a certain number of harvests, right? Because the land produces harvest, right? Livestock, which is true wealth and resources. Cattle, livestock, precious metals, owning land, that's true wealth. It says, show your fear of Yahweh by not taking advantage of each other. It says, he is Yahweh your God, right? If you want to live securely in the land, follow my decrees and obey my regulations, which is Yahweh's law, statutes, and commandments. Then the land will yield large crops, and you will eat your fill and live securely in it. It says, so I mean, that's pretty much it. All right, it's going into it. I'll keep it going. It says, but you must ask, what will we eat during the 7th year, since we are not allowed to plant or harvest crops that year? Be assured that I will send my blessing for you in the 6th year, so that the land will produce large crops enough for 3 years. See, so the Most High is not grievous in his law, statutes, and commandments. That seventh year will be a land of rest, which goes into the land Sabbath. But the Lord is going to make sure the 6th year that there's an abundance of harvest, so that when the 7th year comes, we could follow his laws without no stress, without no worry. It says, so the land will produce a crop large enough for 3 years. When you plant your fields in the 8th year, you will still be eating from the large crop of the 6th year. In fact, you will still be eating from that large crop when the new crop is harvested in the 9th year. All right? So that's the Jubilee. Now, let's also read it, because I should have it here. It's going to go into it. All right? Now, let's get into this right here. So I typed in law on the Hebrew servant. Let's get into this now. So this is the AI overview. The laws concerning Hebrew servant or slaves in the Bible are primarily found in Exodus 21, verses 1 through 11, Leviticus chapter 25, verses 39 through 55, and Deuteronomy chapter 15, verses 12 through 18. Unlike chattel slavery and other ancient cultures, Hebrew servitude was more akin to debt, bondage, or indentured servitude, designed to prevent destitution and ensure the eventual restoration of freedom and property. It says key aspects of law regarding the Hebrew servant include term of service. A Hebrew servant was to serve a maximum of 6 years, and at the 7th year, they were to be set free without any payment, right? Which will be the year of release, which is every 7 years. And Jubilee is the 50th year, right? So that 49th year, right, which is 7 times 7, right? That would be what? The 49th year, and then the following year, after the year of release, which is that 49th year, that 50th year would be a Jubilee, all right? So it says voluntary permanent service. If the servant loved their master and decided not to leave, the master was to take them to the doorpost and pierce their ear with an awl, which is an earring, signaling they would serve for life or until the Jubilee. Treatment. Hebrew servants were not to be treated harshly, but rather as hired laborers or temporary residents. They were to be treated with dignity as a fellow kinsman rather than property, right? Compensation upon release. When setting a Hebrew servant free, the master was forbidden from sending them away empty-handed. They were to be furnished generously from the flock, threshing floor, and wine vat. Family status. If the servant came into service single, they left single. If they were married, their wife left with them. However, if the master gave the servant a wife during the servitude, she and her children remained the property of the master. The Jubilee year. In addition to the 6-year limit, Leviticus 25 states that all Hebrew servants were automatically freed during the Jubilee year, occurring every 50 years, returning to their family and ancestral land, meaning what? The allotted land for that particular tribe, right? Which will be based off of the seed of your father. The case of the female servant. A Hebrew daughter sold into servitude, often a form of betrothal/marriage, had different rules. If she did not please her master, she had to be redeemed and could not be sold to foreign people, meaning heathen nations. It says physical protection. If a master struck a servant and knocked out a tooth or destroyed an eye, the servant was to be freed as compensation. It says these laws were rooted in theological historical memory that the Israelites were once slaves in Egypt and were redeemed by Yahweh, making them forbidden from ruling over each other ruthlessly. All right? So this is real love right here. But these are laws we can't keep because we're not sovereign and independent. All right? So now let's get into it. So it mentioned Exodus 21:1. So that's what we're going to read. This is Exodus 21:1. And it says what? Ordinances for the people. As you can see, it's also Deuteronomy 15:12 through 18. So this is Exodus 21:1. Now these are the judgments which thou shalt set before them. And whose of them? The children of Israel, the seed of the promise. which are you so-called Negroes, Hispanics, and Native American Indians. We make up the 12 tribes of Israel. It says, if thou buy an Hebrew servant, 6 years he shall serve, and in the 7th year he shall go free for nothing, because that's the year of release, right? Let's read in the NLT version. This is dealing with what? Fair treatment of slaves, or fair treatment for the Hebrew servants, your fellow Israelites, right? NLT version, Exodus 21:1. It says, these are the regulations you must present to Israel. If you buy a Hebrew slave, he may serve for no more than 6 years. Set him free in the 7th year, which is the year of release, right? And he will owe you nothing for his freedom, because the year of release, they don't owe any debts. Everything is resetted, right? Verse 3. If he was single when he became your slave, he shall leave single. So these are rules concerning the Hebrew servant, right? How you deal with them, how you treat them. It says, but if he was married before he became a slave, then his wife must be free with him, right? If his master gave him a wife while he was a slave, and they had sons or daughters, then only the man will be freed in the 7th year. But his wife and children will still belong to his master. But the slave may declare, I love my master, my wife, and my children. I don't want to go free. If he does this, his master must present him before Yahweh. Then his master must take him to the door or doorpost and publicly pierce his ear with an awl, which is an earring. After that, the slave will serve his master for life. When a man sells his daughter as a slave, she will not be freed at the end of the 6 years as the men are. So the men are freed, right? But the daughter is given a different rule. If she does not satisfy her owner, he must allow her to be brought back again. But he is not allowed to sell her to foreigners, since he is the one who broke the contract with her. But if the slave's owner arranges for her to marry his son, he may no longer treat her as a slave, but as a daughter. If a man who has married a slave wife, meaning the Hebrew servant, takes another wife for himself, he must not neglect the rights of the first wife to food, clothing, and sexual intimacy, right? Because these are things a husband has to do for his wife. You know, you got to give her the rod, you got to make sure she eat, you got to be a provider, right? If he fails in any of these 3 obligations, she may leave as a free woman without making any payment, all right? So there you go. So that's it for that. Now, let's get into this, because it mentioned Deuteronomy and it also mentioned Leviticus. It's the NLT version. So this is dealing with what? Release for debtors, right? As you can see, it's in Exodus 21:1-11, and also Leviticus, which we're going to get Leviticus after. So Deuteronomy 15:1, it says, at the end of every 7th year, which is the year of release, right? Every 7th year is the year of release. The 50th year is a Jubilee, right? It says, at the end of every 7th year, NLT version, Deuteronomy 15:1, you must cancel the debts of everyone who owes you money. This is how it must be done. Everyone must cancel the loans they have made to their fellow Israelites. They must not demand payment from their neighbors or relatives, for Yahweh's time of release has arrived, right? This release from debt, however, applies only to your fellow Israelites, not to foreigners living among you. There should be no poor among you, for Yahweh your God will greatly bless you in the land he has given you as a special possession, which is the promised land of Israel. I just did a video on that. It says you will receive this blessing if you are careful to obey all the commands of Yahweh your God, or Yahweh our God, that I am giving you today. So this is Moses speaking to the children of Israel. It says the Lord your God, which is Yahweh our God, will bless you as he has promised. You will lend money to many nations, but will never need to borrow. So these are blessings. You can read about the blessings in Deuteronomy chapter 28 from verses 1-14. You will rule many nations, but they will not rule over you. But if there are any poor Israelites in your town, when you arrive in the land Yahweh our God is giving you, do not be hard-hearted or tight-fisted towards them. Instead, be generous and lend them whatever they need. Do not be mean-spirited and refuse someone a loan because the year of canceling debts is close at hand. If you refuse to make the loan and the needy person cries out to the Lord, you will be considered guilty of sin. Give generously to the poor, not grudgingly, for Yahweh your God will bless you in everything you do. There will always be some in the land who are poor. That is why I am commanding you to share freely with the poor and with other Israelites in need. Now it's going into what? Release for Hebrew slaves. It says, if a fellow Hebrew sells himself or herself to be your servant and serves you for 6 years, in the 7th year you must set that servant free. When you release a male servant, do not send him away empty-handed. Give him a generous farewell gift from your flock, your threshing floor, and wine press. And your wine press. Share with him some of the bounty with which Yahweh our God has blessed you. It says, remember that ye were once slaves in the land of Egypt, and the Lord your God redeemed you. That is why I am giving you this command. So the law and the Hebrew servant represented how the Israelites were slaves under Egypt, the Egyptians, all right? It says, but suppose your servant says, I will not leave you, because he loves you and your family, and he has done well with you. In that case, take an awl and push it through his earlobe into the door. After that, he will be your servant for life, and do the same for your female servants. You must not consider it a hardship when you release your servants. Remember that for 6 years they have given you services worth double the wages of hired workers, and the Lord your God will bless you in all you do. All right. Now let's read it in Leviticus 25, right? Leviticus chapter 25 and verse 39, NLT version. It says, if one of your fellow Israelites falls into poverty and is forced to sell himself to you, do not treat him as a slave, meaning don't treat him harshly. Don't treat him like he's inferior, right? Treat him instead as a hired worker or as a temporary resident who lives with you, and he will serve you only until the year of Jubilee, which is every 50 years, right? The year release is every 7 years. It says, at that time, he and his children will no longer be obligated to you concerning the year of Jubilee, right? And they will return to their clans or tribes and go back to the land originally allotted to their ancestors, because each tribe had a particular lot or landmass promised to them within the land of Israel, right? It says, the people of Israel are my servants, whom I brought out of the land of Egypt, so they must never be sold as slaves. Show your fear of Yahweh by not treating them harshly. However, you may purchase male and female slaves from among the nations around you. It says, you may also purchase the children of temporary residents who live among you, including those who have been born in your land. You may treat them as your property, passing them on to your children as a permanent inheritance. You may treat them as slaves, but you must never treat your fellow Israelites this way. Suppose a foreigner or temporary resident becomes rich while living among you. If any of your fellow Israelites fall into poverty and are forced to sell themselves to such a foreigner or to a member of his family, they still retain the right to be brought back even after they have been purchased. They may be brought back by a brother, an uncle, or a cousin. In fact, anyone from the extended family may buy them back. They may also redeem themselves if they have prospered. They will negotiate the price of their freedom with the person who brought them. The price will be based on the number of years from the time they were sold until the next year of Jubilee, whatever it would cost to hire a worker for that period of time. If many years still remain until the Jubilee, they will repay the proper proportion of what they received when they sold themselves. If only a few years remain until the year of Jubilee, they will repay a small amount for their redemption. The foreigner must treat them as workers hired on a yearly basis. You must not allow a foreigner to treat any of your fellow Israelites harshly. If any Israelites have not been brought back by the time of the year of Jubilee arrives, they and their children must be set free at that time. For the people of Israel belong to me. They are my servants, whom I brought out of the land of Egypt. I am the Lord your God. All right? So that's the laws on the Hebrew servant. So let's just read a little bit more, and I'm going to close it up. So I typed in laws for poor Israelites, right? AI overview. Laws for poor Israelites in the Mosaic Law focus on preventing permanent poverty through debt forgiveness, land redistribution, and social support. Key mandates included mandatory gleaning rights for the poor, interest-free loans, the cancellation of debts every 7 years, and the return of ancestral property every 50 years, which is the Jubilee. Key protection and rights, gleaning rights. Landowners were forbidden from harvesting to the edge of their fields or gathering fallen produce, leaving the remainder for the poor widows, orphans, and foreigners. Debt forgiveness. Every 7th year, all debts owed by fellow Israelites were to be canceled. That's recorded in Deuteronomy chapter 15, verses 1 through 2, which I read already. It says the Jubilee year, which is the 50th year, right? Land that had been sold due to property returned to its original owner, and Israelites who sold themselves into servitude were set free. Prohibition of interest. Israelites were forbidden from charging interest on loans to fellow poor Israelites, ensuring loans were for support, not profit. It says fair employment. Poor workers had to be paid daily before sunset and could not be treated as slaves, but rather as hired servants. It says collateral restrictions. Creditors could not enter a debtor's home to see security for a loan, nor take essential items like a handmill. These laws were designed to ensure that no Israelite will become permanently dispossessed or destitute, treating such provisions as a matter of justice rather than charity, right? So these are laws, statutes, and commandments that's not being upheld in America, which is why you have homelessness and crime going up. See, if you had these laws implemented, it will cut down on the homeless, shelters and stuff like that. So that's pretty much it. Lord willing, you was edified by this lesson. Shalom. And also, see, these type of laws like this, it's not going to apply to Israelites in the kingdom of heaven, because all Israelites is going to be rich in the kingdom of heaven. All right? But the heathens, their lives is going to be way better keeping these laws and following our way of life. Shalom.